Hamas terrorists are still holding around 240 hostages who they kidnapped and brought into Gaza during the October 7th terror attacks. Posters displaying their faces, including many of the children, a desperate plea for help, have been put up on walls around the globe. However, anti-Israel protesters have taken it upon themselves to rip them down. In New York, multiple flyers are torn away daily. In Germany, police were caught tearing down posters of hostages too. And here in London, the same has happened. My next guest was caught in the act. Shehab Elrefai tore down posters of the hostages in Los Angeles, and he joins me now. Mr. Elrefai, why would you rip down posters of hostages? Why would you do that? What's the answer?
Because it is perpetuating a completely false narrative that the Israelis are the victims, of which I do not promote any violence towards any innocent human being, regardless of their background or beliefs or any type of targeting of a specific individual. And those people that have their pictures on those posters, I do not know them, and I do not wish anybody who is innocent any type of harm. It is more of a symbolic gesture because it is pathetic propaganda that they are putting into civilian areas that we are living in, and they're perpetuating this narrative to keep subconsciously programming people to think that Hamas are terrorists.
Let me tell you what the
Let me not even refer to Hamas, just the Palestinian people in general and Muslim people in general.
Yeah, let me tell you the
context. Just like 9/11.
Let me tell you the context of where you did this. You were several blocks down from the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. There are many Jewish people who live in Los Angeles. And these 240 hostages include grandmothers who escaped the Holocaust. They include 3-month-old babies. They include many children, and their families are understandably desperate for information about where they are and whether they're still alive. And we've already had some cases where people, from the identity on the posters, they have been identified as still alive. Why would you deprive families of that?
All due respect to anybody who is suffering the loss of people that they love, which many people around the world are currently suffering from, but there's always a spotlight on a specific demographic of people. Because apparently, just like George Orwell would say, some people are more equal than others. And also a very important clarification that needs to be done is the difference between Zionism and Judaism. Zionism is a political ideology that is using Judaism as a front to push its agenda, whereas Judaism is simply a religion of which my own religion stems from. Would you like me to show?
We're talking about 240 people. Why are you laughing? What's possibly funny about this?
Because if you have the background information that I have about the world in general and how politics is a game and war is business, you'd realize why this. I'm not laughing at people suffering, not at all. I completely
were just laughing.
Wish that to happen to
anyone.
You
were literally laughing as I asked you about 240 hostages, including a 3-month-old baby.
What about all the people that are getting obliterated in Gaza right now?
Why don't you stop playing
whataboutery?
Why don't you stop playing whataboutery? There are mass protests
going on. What happened to the hostage, that old lady? Hold on.
To be clear.
Hold on. What happened to the old lady that was released and she shook his hand before leaving?
There are mass protests.
I'd appreciate it if you don't interrupt me.
There are mass protests all over the world, pro-Palestinian protests.
I haven't joined a single protest.
They are being allowed.
Hold on.
They are being allowed to happen.
I have not joined a single protest.
But they're being allowed to happen.
But I would like to send a message to those protesters and protesters around the world. When you go out into the street begging your so-called leaders to do something, why don't you do something yourself? Why do we keep giving the authority and power to certain pathetic individuals who have no competence to be in the positions that they're in to continue having the quote-unquote power? The power is within each and every single individual, which is something we have completely forgotten. And this is how they have people like puppets on strings.
Again, I simply ask you...
Many members of modern humanity are pathetic.
I simply ask you why you would rip down posters of people who've been taken hostage, which may give their families some hope, if someone can identify them, that they may still be alive.
Just like... OK, let me answer your question on multiple layers. It's false hope, number one. If they really wanted them back, they'd be back. Number two, what about all the other families that are suffering from, they're seeing their direct family getting bombed and their entire, the videos that I'm seeing on accounts like Mu'taz Azazia's Instagram page and many other journalists that are there posting about these things. If I started doing that on the street and putting his content, just take a screenshot and put it on the street. Los Angeles and any place that is of a civilian manner is not going to be civilian anymore. It's going to be too graphic for people to walk around on the streets and live the rest of their lives. And also another message
that
to
has nothing to do with the question I
protesting.
asked you again. Nothing to do with it. You're not answering the question.
Maybe you're not understanding the nuances of my communication.
You know what? I've got to be honest with you. I don't really care about your subtle nuances or you thinking it's all entertaining.
Because it's a multi-layered. It's a multi-layered situation.
It's not multi-layered. You are walking around near the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles, a place I've attended several times and found profoundly moving. And you're walking around there recently, and you are walking around there several weeks after the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust.
It's not on Jewish people.
240
I live
hostages were
with
taken,
Jewish people.
including 3-month-old
I am currently
babies
living with
and Holocaust
Jewish people
survivors.
in Jewish Central.
And your only contribution to this is to walk around and rip down hostage posters. And you seem to find it funny.
My main contribution would be to educate people on what is really happening.
Well, let me educate you.
Beat to the slave master's drum.
What you are doing is shockingly insensitive and inappropriate and hurtful to the family members of those people taken hostage, including many young children. And by the way, I also think the deaths of all the children in Gaza is horrific, and I've said so many times. But what you are doing,
I respect you for that.
Your sole
for not having that double standard.
Your sole contribution to this is to rip down posters of hostages, and I find that contemptible. We'll end the interview there. Thank you for your time.